is wrong with us? That was actually rhetorical. I'm glad nobody started to answer when I said what is wrong with us, because we don't have all night. We got a show to do.
All night long. All night.
Where the heck is everyone? You're right there. Duh. Whoa, Esser Gaming in the house. How you doing? I remember you. From the way back. I assume. Yep, okay. Previously tap this, kill that. That is definitely a deep cut.
Nice.
All right, that is recording for a minute, so surely the recording has started by now. So here we go. Hang on, is the episode number right? It is. Yeah, I checked that already. Okay, good. All right, here we go. Oh, jam. Is anyone else getting sick of that? I'm sort of getting sick of that after 700 episodes.
Really? I didn't think you could, but okay.
Hello. I used to say it all the time. Now I only say it to start the show. Like, it used to be a thing that I would just say, and now I don't say it anymore, except for that. I guess I will occasionally bust out like the falsetto, like jam, when something silly happens. But anyway, hi, I'm Chewie, and I'm covered in jam. He's all sticky. I have other dorks here. What are they covered in?
I'm Brian. I'm the tangent master and ramble guy. Did I just... Wow,
See?
I
A lot
just
of
messed
rambling
up.
right there.
Brian's getting sick of it too.
Wow. I am apparently covered in incompetence and shame. I need to go rethink my own titles. That's what I'm covered in. I'll be in the corner over here.
I'm Mike. I'm the rules guy and game lore guy. Still remember that part. And I'm covered in mustard.
Mustard? Don't let me be silly.
That is legit gross. Who actually likes mustard?
And I'm Dirk, the self-proclaimed greenest man alive and moral compass of the group. And I'm covered in joy.
What?
Not the character from, Inside Out. Because that would mean that, I had killed her and, was wearing her, Hercules.
Well, that got
did
dark.
To the line, but...
Wearing her like Hercules. There's got to be a meme somewhere now.
Oh, my God. When you said joy, my first thought was my friend from high school who I saw in the people you may know on Facebook and sent her a friend request earlier today. Oh, joy. One of the few people from high school that I lost touch with that I'm bummed about. Fun fact, I don't give a crap about most of the people I went to high school with. I think would it be 25 years? Yeah, I guess it would. Reunion is in 2 weeks, and I don't care, and I'm not going and don't want to see any of those people. Except for Scott. I think Scott's going to go for some reason. But I could just be like, hey, Scott, you want to hang out? And hopefully he would be like, maybe. But anyway, so this is episode 704 of the Manapool. Not counting the who only knows the number of Dorks Just Chatting episodes we've done. It's a lot at this point.
It's true.
So we were gonna try to finish the RPG tonight, and then Dirk was like, hey, I got school stuff. I won't be there till late. And I was like, let's not try to do the RPG if Dirk's going to show up super late, because we don't want to, like, get halfway through the big final boss battle and Dirk be like, I gotta go to school in the morning. Good night. Be like, wait, but we're... All right. So... or have Brian doze off
Good call.
in the middle of DMing, you know.
Yeah. Roll a d20 and add you. Oh.
It's like...
Yeah.
I got a 13. I got Brian. Hey!
Rocks fall, everybody dies.
Hey, that sounds like a dream I had at some point. I don't know, 8 to 70 years ago. So, instead of doing the RPG, Brian said, why don't we just talk about RPGs? And I was like, yeah. Because that's what you say when Brian's right.
Thank you. Wouldn't
Which
kill
happens
some of you
more...
guys to say it more often.
It happens more often than we admit, but we can't let Brian know that because then his head will get even bigger.
It's true, and it's pretty big to start with.
Yeah. Good lord, the size of that dome piece. So...
Oh, yeah.
So, I have to start off with a small rant.
Go ahead.
That I always have to do whenever we bring up genres of things, is the video game genres make no damn sense anymore. And quite probably never did. Because when
maybe back in like the 8-bit era,
maybe
they did,
but even then they were starting, like, once Dragon Quest and Final Fantasy hit real big, everything started to get like RPG elements in them, you know.
Yeah.
Like Zelda 2 and even Castlevania 2. Like the genre mixing started super early. But, like, okay, let me pull up Steam. I've got a dynamic category here, which means it just updates itself. Like, when I add new games, if a game fits into the category, it adds itself. And it's RPG games. Oh, and I've got it sorted by hours played. Well, okay, that works, because the 3 listed here, I would argue one of these is an RPG. It's Skyrim. Nice. That's an RPG. Hades? Hades.
Isn't that a roguelike?
Yeah, and it's a roguelike like dungeon crawler type thing. That's not an RPG. And then the third one shown is Rogue Book. And right below it is Slay the Spire, because they're, you know, the same idea. Those aren't RPGs. Those are deck building roguelikes. What?
Huh. No.
Listed below that are Vampire Survivors, absolutely not an RPG. Final Fantasy VII Remake, we'll get to that. And Sea of Stars, absolutely an RPG. You know, as far as video games are concerned. And then below that, we've got Bloodstained Ritual of the Night. That's a side-scrolling 2D Metroidvania. Rogue Legacy 2, another side-scrolling Metroidvania, but this one is a roguelike. And then Honey Pop. Yes,
what?
Honey Pop, the porn puzzle game. All right, it's a really good game. Shut up. But, like, though, that's the first 3 categories here of my most played RPGs. Below that are the 4 of the 5 Final Fantasy games that I've played so far in the Pixel Remaster, and Spider-Man Miles Morales. Like, nobody knows what RPG means.
Don't forget all the Call of Duty and Modern Warfare games that in multiplayer you level up as you kill more people.
Exactly. So those are totally role-playing games. Now, I would argue that the term role-playing game in video games just doesn't apply to the vast majority of games, even games that we all are like, yeah, that's an RPG. Like Sea of Stars. Sea of Stars is totally an RPG. It's the love letter to Chrono Trigger, and to a lesser extent, Super Mario RPG. And Chrono Trigger and Mario RPG are role playing games, right? I mean, you're not really playing a
Yes.
role any more than you are in any other game. Like in Sea of Stars, you're a pair of characters, and you go through the story. You're not really playing a role. But that's okay, because in video games, role playing game is a mechanical description rather than a like a narrative or gameplay description. It all gets really weird. Like I would say Skyrim is a role playing game, because you can go into Skyrim and do anything. Like you could murder everybody in every town. You could follow the quest lines. You could just decide, you know what? My character's a farmer, and just go find a farm and pick vegetables and sell them. Like, you can play a role. Esther Gaming says, I think Baldur's Gate is the epitome of RPG. And yeah, I haven't played the third one. In fact, I've only played the first one, but still. And yeah, Shifuji just hit it. He says, I feel like RPGs and games with RPG elements are distinct, but they keep getting lumped in together. And yeah, and it's a problem, because everything has RPG elements in it these days.
I mean, one of the things I was going to bring up just during general discussion was something like Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I've never played it, but your character levels up, right?
Yup.
You traverse through an area, and yes, it's a Metroidvania, and you fill out the map, but you acquire items and gain levels from experience points. So that is very RPG. So
yeah, and like these days, like Dark Souls is an RPG. I mean, Dark Souls is an action RPG, but it's still an RPG. Apparently, just because it has stats that you can level up, and your character gains levels and things.
Sure.
And
Kingdom Hearts is definitely RPGs because so much of the game is built around the leveling system. So
yeah,
it would be a very different game if it didn't have that leveling system.
but like by that token, again, like every God of War game is an RPG, and that bothers me. And I don't know why that bothers me. But
because you're trying to make things fit in particular boxes, and you realize that things can bleed a little bit, but when you take a look back and you see just how much things bleed, well, that got dark very quickly. But
like,
you know what I mean.
Yeah, like wearing joy as a hat. But like, if Dark Souls is an RPG, which is a third player action game where you run around and kill things and find items and kill bosses.
Yeah.
What about like Resident Evil 4? Because you don't level up Leon, but you level up your guns.
Yeah.
And it's weird how they're both third person action games, and they both have stats that you can build up of some sort. But one of them is definitely not an RPG, and the other one is definitely an RPG. And it's because video game genres don't make any damn sense and never did.
Yeah. So for what I was going to be talking about, and I appreciate the rant and the discussion so far, were games that I felt clearly, in my opinion, had strong RPG elements to the point that was the focus of the game, versus another game, I would say that again, what I know of Symphony of the Night, yes, it has RPG elements, but the main focus is exploration. Would anybody that's played the game feel like that's fair?
Oh yeah, it is.
Like,
It is absolutely an exploration focused game because you have to figure out where the hell you're supposed to go next.
so would you say that the RPG elements are more of a way to keep you from expanding too fast in multiple directions, or a way to like, oh, I shouldn't go here because I'm gonna get killed? It's more a way of directing you versus the focus of the game.
Would I say it's? I mean,
You see my question?
for that specific example, it's like they just threw that in just because. I guess to
Do
give
you
you
think it actually serves
a
a
sense of growth.
okay? Oh, there. Well, and that could be an element right there, because then you want to feel at the end of the game like, oh, look, these numbers are so much bigger than they were before. So
Although it's been so long since I played it, I don't remember if you have like stats like strength and whatnot, or if because I know in
For which game?
Symphony of the Night, like
I
you
think it's
find different
HP.
weapons that are better or
Yeah.
worse.
I think just things like your HP and your mana bars deplete slower.
Maybe I know you have to find upgrades for like health and magic max, or
Maybe
health
that's
and
what.
hearts, or maybe all three. I can't
Don't-
remember. It's been a very long time.
It's not on Steam, so I don't know.
and I've seen clips of it, but I've never actually played it.
Yeah,
I think I'd probably like it.
isn't it on Steam? Freaking
You could have bought it and played it, and I could tell you.
yeah, who the hell wait, was that's Konami, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yep.
What the hell, Konami? Give us there's already one. It's on the PlayStation that's got Symphony of the Night and the one before that. The good one.
Rondo.
Rondo of Blood. Thank you. Like it's there. All you got to do is put it on Steam. And you know what? I'll buy it immediately. As soon as I see it, I'll be like, "This is on PC. Purchase." Like, I, you're killing me. You're killing me. I have to emulate this crap. You get no money from me emulating it, and I can't even emulate a proper version of Rondo because it wasn't released in English in any way, except that one, or as a hidden perk in the crappy 3D, not 3D gameplay, 3D graphics remake of Rondo. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dracula
the PSP
X.
version. Thank you.
Oh.
Yeah, they did a remake with like polygon graphics, and hidden in that game are Rondo, an English version of Rondo, and Symphony of the Night. Anyway, sorry, it's a different rant. Just they're just leaving money on the table by not putting it on the PC because I refuse to buy anything PlayStation because I don't need it because I've got a PC that plays all the games.
Well, and people have felt like Konami has been leaving money on the table for Castlevania for years, because what's the last Castlevania game they put out? Was it the like fighting game? I don't know. It's been a long time. Yeah, but so
Anyway, RPGs.
Our-
Sorry.
actual RPGs. I thought we'd have a little bit of discussion about what RPGs do we like, and that is not necessarily limited to video games. It just depends on what you have experience with. Chewie's never played a minute of Dungeons and Dragons, for example, so he probably won't have a whole lot to say about that. But others of us may have played other RPGs of various, mediums. So we'll go off of that. But I'm going to start with one that was already mentioned, and I want to talk a little bit about why I like it. I'm going to go ahead and just get this out of the way. And no, it's not Final Fantasy, but it's very close. I want to talk about Chrono Trigger, because Chrono Trigger does so many things right. Yes, you have the traditional leveling system. No, it doesn't do anything extremely innovative with that. It doesn't do like Final Fantasy II's, like you level up this stat and this weapon or anything like that. and it's not terribly difficult. You level up actually fairly quickly, which for some people might be like, this game is too easy. And I get that. The single most important lesson that I learned from Chrono Trigger, and this was after playing Final Fantasy VI, which is one of my all-time favorite games. Um, and I probably spent, like 50 hours on that. Do you know how long the average playthrough for Chrono Trigger is?
It's like, I want to say it's like 25?
It's like, I think I read somewhere it's like under 20.
Oh.
And that's with
I know it's
doing
one of the
most
shorter ones.
stuff. That's
Hmm.
it. And everyone, have you ever met anyone that didn't like Chrono Trigger and was not also a horrible person? Like, Chrono Trigger, I feel like is almost universally beloved. Do you feel like that's a fair statement?
Oh,
Yes.
absolutely. Okay, How Long to Beat says the main story is about 23 hours. Main and sides is about 26 and a half. Completionist
Okay.
is 42. What?
Yeah. I've got
Well,
26.9 hours in mine.
and like the DS version added a ton of extra stuff. Just a
Really?
ton of extra stuff. Yeah. Oh, there's more stuff that ties in with the reptites, so there's more stuff to do in the far back past after Lavos drops, so you actually have more stuff to do. So they added a bunch of features. But the thing is,
I'm sorry, I don't know why, but when you said after Lavos drops, the first thing that popped in my head was, "Babe, wake up! A new Lavos just dropped."
at least it wasn't a toilet joke. But um but it after coming off of some of those games that take, and it seemed like the badge of honor was, oh man, this takes how many hundreds of hours, you're gonna be playing it forever. And even now, when we're dealing with a whole generation, if not two, of gamers that did not grow up with Chrono Trigger, and they have RPGs that literally have DLC every 6 months and will never die, you have that assumption more time equals better. And Chrono Trigger was awesome and is not super long. And part of that is because of the extremely, at the time, innovative New Game Plus, which a bunch of games have taken that and run with it, and that's great. But that was its big innovation. Plus, it just told a good story with likable characters that you got invested in, and the gameplay was so clean. And the whole dual tech, triple tech thing, where you could actually be like, wait, if this person casts fire, and this person stabs somebody with a sword at the same time, like, even though looking back on it, it was honestly, it was a bit limited. Like, it's not like you actually got to create your own. The game said, okay, cool. It did
Hmm.
it for you, but still, it did so many things right that I had to start off with Chrono Trigger because there's almost nothing wrong with it. And even you might even go, I want it to be longer, but it's kind of just right. Sam doesn't replay a whole lot of games.
Excuse me.
Sam replayed Chrono Trigger because she wanted to see different endings and because she wanted, there's something really satisfying about like getting to the end of the game, spending 25 hours or however many it is, and then starting over and being like murderizing everything. Just like look at how strong you get, the the end game satisfaction of look how much I've grown, and you beat up on forest imps, and it's just glorious. So I have to throw out Chrono Trigger just because it's so good. And even though, again, by today's standards, no, you can't really, yes, on a playthrough you can make certain decisions that affect things. You're never going to be able to stab the king in the back, spoiler alert. You're never going to be able to do a ton of crazy stuff like that, but it just does so many things so well. I had to start off with that.
Yeah, and like the thing about Chrono Trigger, I wish there was more. Well, then there, what's 16 or something like that endings?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay. You could just go for all those. I think Scott and I spent a weekend doing that once. Back
One
in
of
the
the
day.
challenge one of the challenges that I set for myself, and I never was able to do it. You know how when you start New Game Plus, you have new portals to go to the end of the game?
Yep.
There's a portal you can take right at the beginning where you only have two characters, Chrono and Marley. If you do it at the right time, you can do it with Chrono only. And I've gotten to the final boss that way with what I thought was a fairly overpowered Chrono, and just losing the action economy of another character, I haven't been able to beat it with just Chrono. But the dialogue sections are hilarious because they're just all skipped. Because he's a silent protagonist. So, but yeah, you've got the playthrough, and part of the fun is like looking for what triggers the different endings, right? So,
Yeah, it's like, when do I go back and fight Lavos to get a new ending?
hmm yeah,
Freaking Lavos. Yeah. So on
insert
that note,
Lavos
if you
disclaimer
like
here.
Chrono Trigger, you should probably check out Sea of Stars, the new. I guess technically it's still new. It came out
Yeah,
earlier this year. I have no concept of the passage of time.
I've heard of it, but I've never played it. Why do you? What is it that you think is so good?
Well, it's a love letter to Chrono Trigger. Duh. It's by Sabotage Studio, the people who did The Messenger, which is one of my all-time favorite games of all time ever. Which was a love letter to ninja platforming games of the 8 and 16-bit era. But Sea of Stars is their second game that takes place, spoilers, in the same world as The Messenger in a much different time. And yeah, you start with two main characters. The main characters are, I will admit, pretty bland. But, so was Chrono. Let's be real. At least these characters talk. Oh, burn! But it's funny. It's heartfelt. I found myself streaming it in tears on more than one occasion, happy and sad. Not at actually once at the same time. Yeah. It's got a really fun story. It's fine if you didn't play The Messenger, because it had been several years since I played The Messenger. I missed a bunch of references, and I didn't even care. But yeah, it's just really good, and the gameplay itself starts with Chrono Trigger style combat, but it adds in a bunch of timed button presses and stuff like that keeps you engaged, so you don't and lots of resource management. Like, none of your characters have that much magic, like MP,
Mm-hmm.
but you get MP back by hitting enemies.
Okay.
Okay.
And like, you can only have 10 food items at once, which are mainly your heals. So there's a that keeps you from hoarding them, because you can't, so freaking use them.
Right. I mean, that
And
honestly, that sounds like a good thing because the limited capacity says, and I kind of like that with the MP as well, because a lot of times in RPGs, especially Final Fantasies, especially when I was younger, I wouldn't cast spells because MP was a limited
yeah, MP's
resource.
finite, and
So
there's a boss coming up.
there you go. Rydia, so much of the time, would not cast spells until the boss. Now, when I was playing Pixel Remasters when I'm older, I'm like, sure, nuke everything. That's great. But the fact that you have limited MP, but you get it back from hitting enemies, encourages you to just go like zap and then hit, and then right. I mean, that's what I'm picturing. So, do you feel like it's more dynamic that way?
Oh yeah, And there's more. Like hitting enemies also causes there's also it's called a lock system. When an enemy is going to do something special, that isn't just an attack,
Mm-hmm.
then they'll have little symbols over their head of either blade damage or blunt damage, and different characters, like your two main characters, one uses a staff, one uses swords. And the different elements: poison, arcane, sun, moon, stuff like that. And you have to, if you want to stop the enemy from doing whatever it is it's going to do, then you have to break all of those locks, and it'll stun it, and it won't do the thing.
Cool.
And you do that by casting spells, or also another thing, you can use magic without using magic, which is a big what does that mean at the beginning of the game. And that's when you hit an enemy, little orbs will pop out, and you can, whichever character is up can absorb one or more, and whatever character that is has an element that they use. So like if you're using the boy main character, I forget their names. It starts with a Z and one starts with a V. Zane, Zale, and Valaire, something like that. But like if he absorbs it, it'll give his attack the sun element, so you can get blade and sun by absorbing one of the orbs. And that's the other thing that keeps you from just going blah 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 whatever, attack attack attack, is at any point in the game, any enemy encounter could potentially ruin you if you're not paying attention. It's not that it's hard, but it's more engaging than just, hey, everybody attack, everybody attack, everybody attack. Okay. And when you get like a full party, like you can only have 3 on the screen at any given time, but you can swap them out at will, which is awesome. And allows for a lot of strategery.
Cool.
Plus, everyone's ultimate attack is amazing. There's also the dual techs. I forget what they're called in Sea of Stars now, but the techniques from Chrono Trigger. Everybody has those, so like you can do the sun and the moon attack at the same time, or you could heal everybody, or whatever. It's great. I love it. I got all the Chewies.
I think you touched on something really interesting, which is, sometimes the button mashing can feel tedious. One of the nice things about Mario is, yes, you press A to jump and B to run and all that, but if all you do is hold down A, you're gonna die right away because that first Goomba is gonna hit you, or you have to pay attention as the environment changes. Whereas in an RPG, it can be like, okay, I bumped into an enemy, everybody do your normal thing. And timed hits are interesting because they can mix it up a bit. Sea of Stars, Final Fantasy VIII, one of the characters, Squall, could, do a timed hit, none of the others could, so they felt very samey. Dirk,
Mm-hmm.
I know you're going to talk about Legend of Dragoon, are you not?
Well, it's been so far removed it didn't even make my list.
Wow. Okay. Well, that had
But
a
I
time
love
hit
Legend of
theme,
Dragoon.
right?
It definitely
Okay.
should make a reappearance.
Okay. I was trying to do a segue for you, but if you have other stuff on your list, please don't. I'm not trying to dictate. So,
Oh, one of them on my list is KOTOR.
does that have timed hits?
Not timed hits, but
Then my segue fails. But
yeah, it did.
what do you love? What do you love about Knights of the Old Republic?
That it's Star Wars and it's awesome.
Good night, everybody.
So,
I say, wow,
what
that's
makes it an RPG is similar to in vein to the others is there is there's a party system. You can choose your party. It does have the people attack and numbers pop out of people's heads. sort of thing, and it levels up and everything. But it's a very rich story, and depending on who's your party, you can unlock a lot of story behind the characters. So there's the normal story, but just like with anything, there are tons of side quests that you can go into. A lot of in terms of leveling, there's like the normal leveling, but you can also take the character in a direction that you want them to be. So if you want your character to be a double like a twin lightsaber wielding person, you can do it. Who goes and is solely like, I'm going to go and beat the snot out of you, or you can be the uh, counselor style Jedi who only wields one lightsaber but goes and buffs everybody in the party, so that way they do, huge damage. Or maybe you don't want a Jedi, you want your character to be a gunslinger, you can make your character a gunslinger. So there's a lot of uh, the elements of, you can do what you want, you can kind of match the what you want your character to be, in addition to choosing the party members who support you, or the ones that you just want to learn more about and learn their story. So there's a lot of that goes into it, all set in the Star Wars universe.
Cool. I tried Star Wars Galaxies for a while, and we can talk if we want about MMORPGs.
I think
But
they're their own
you think they're their
genre,
own thing? Okay. So
because
no.
if we get into WoW, you get into the current version of KOTOR. It's Knights of the. It's been long enough, I can't remember what it is now, but that is its own genre.
Okay.
Yeah, they're not games so much as they are jobs.
Yes, they
But
are
yeah,
lifetime commitments.
Dirk, you can stop playing. Blizzard won't send an enforcer to your
Oh,
house.
I haven't played it in, like, I picked it up just to sort of jump on for a second a couple days ago, but I haven't actually played WoW in probably a month. Like my like I was like, I did a month subscription, and then it ran out about a couple days ago. But yeah, I can do a little bit, and then I get so other things happen, life happens, and I just can't play anymore. So I don't do
There you
the
go.
full subscription where I'm good for like 6 months and everything. I just can't do that anymore.
Okay. Mike, what's on your list?
So, talking about genres, I went around. It's like, okay, what is really an RPG and what's just an adventure game where you have some stats that go up? But I think the characterization that Chewie brought up earlier, giving something like Skyrim as a the exemplary example, whatever you want to call it, um, something where you can just wander around and do whatever. Uh, and there's still stuff to do when you're wandering around and doing whatever. I think that makes a big difference. So something like something like Eternal Darkness doesn't really work, because after you've explored the level enough, there's nothing more in it to do. You've killed all the enemies, you've opened all the doors, you just got to do the last thing, and then it's done. You can't just do whatever. But
Mm-hmm.
Something like Legend of Zelda, you can wander around all you want, and enemies will respawn, and there's stuff and items to collect and money to get, and whatever. So when I really think back, so some of my favorite video game RPGs were Paper Mario and Paper Mario Thousand Year Door.
I only played the
Mhm.
original Mario RPG. I didn't play any of the Paper Mario. I heard they were great. I just wasn't getting stuff for the DS at that point. So what really made them unique?
Well, the art style really stood out. I never actually played the original Mario RPG, um, and they're able to do some really quirky things with that, like not just for aesthetics, but also even like game mechanics, with everyone and everything being flat in some way. But then the you were talking about timed hits systems. There's a way to get a special effect out of almost any attack move by hitting buttons in a certain sequence or at a certain time, or hitting a button really fast, um, or letting something go at a precise time, stuff like that. So that keeps things interesting during combat. But also the companion system. Um, you build up a stable of these companions that follow you around, and you can have one at a time helping you during battle, and they have a bunch of really different um, abilities that can be pretty useful in their own way. The story's cool. The the dialogue and the character interactions are really funny. I was just thoroughly entertained by the first Paper Mario, and Thousand Year Door took that and uh, improved on improved on everything. It was great.
Sweet. Or and
Hmm.
maybe you said this, and I was trying to capture everything you said. Are there action elements to it as well? Because I know in the original Super Mario RPG for the Super Nintendo, it was an RPG, but I think because of Mario's always been a platformer, you did move around in the world, like in individual stages. You would have like moving platforms and things to jump to. Is there anything like that in Paper Mario, or not as much?
There's some. There's some of that. Let's see. There are levels where there are certain areas where it's a little more 2D with the way the area is laid out, and there's a bit more platforming in those, because the areas that are laid out in more of a 3D pattern, 3D platforming can get kind of obnoxious, and it's a fixed camera pretty much all the time that just moves back and forth as you go back and forth to the left and the right, and a
Hmm.
little bit forward and back around an area. So yeah, there's a little bit of platforming, and you can interact with enemies in the overworld to an extent. Like if you hit them by jumping on them or hitting them with the hammer in the overworld, then you'll get like a first attack, a special first attack when the combat starts for real.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the platforming part of it in the overworld is more limited than what it sounds like you're describing.
Okay. Well, I mean, that was what I was asking about. I've never played Paper Mario, but I've
What?
heard
Which
of
one
it.
just got a new Switch release? Was that Thousand Year Door?
I think I saw something about that on Facebook. Yeah,
It is Thousand Year Door, yeah. Which
cool.
is I'm pretty sure widely regarded as the best one,
It's very good.
because there have been several Paper Mario games over the years for various systems. But
Yeah, I only ever played the first two.
I mean, I think you played the best two from what I understand.
From what I gathered, also, yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, it just got a remake on the Switch, which is trippy because the Super Mario RPG just got a remake on the Switch too. Hmm,
It did.
Hmm.
I need to play that at some point. I think I'm gonna have to give up on streaming it and just play it.
Um, well, you mentioned kind of like interacting with enemies and like getting a first hit in combat, right?
Hmm.
So that leads me to one of the things on my list. I had on here, and no, I did not list every RPG I've ever made. These are just some of the ones that really stood out to me because they were did things a little different and they had things I liked about them. Raise your hand if you ever played Earthbound.
Nope.
Unfortunately, not.
Unfortunately, not.
Only me?
Yep.
Wow. I'm I'm gonna go to the chat now for to see who's raising their hand over there. But um Earthbound was one where most of the enemies not all the bosses, but most of the enemies on the overworld, you could try. There were no 100% random encounters where you're just wandering around and then suddenly, like, cut to a battle screen. Every enemy is on the overworld. And in fact, how you can tell if there's going to be a group of enemies is generally if there's more than one, like, cluster around you. When you
Mm.
impact one, there's maybe like 2 seconds where it's about to go the battle screen and other enemies can like try to close in really quickly.
Yep.
But if if you approach one from behind, you may get a surprise round. If you are higher level than the enemy, it may start to actually run away from you on the over screen. And if you are over leveled by quite a bit, it would go to the battle screen and just says you won. So that was one of the things I liked about it was that sort of interaction. But
That's pretty funny.
the other thing that was innovative about it at the time, and now we've seen again, it's been what, 20 years since Earthbound came out. That's probably even lowballing it. I'm not going to look it up, but I think it came out in 1995 because it came out the one year I lived in St. Louis. But the fact that it was set in um in a modern setting, like it was not high fantasy, it was not, it had
Mm.
science fiction elements, but you play a kid and your main weapon is a baseball bat and you can order pizza on your phone and the pizza guy delivers it to you. And Chewie, I'm sorry, I don't think you can tip him. I apologize. But um, then the longer the pizza sits in your inventory, the cooler it gets and the less hit points you get from eating it and stuff like that. I thought was great, even though it kind of took a step back from graphics wise, like in battle. You don't see the characters. And after playing Final Fantasies, I was like, I don't see Ness. I don't see the other people on the screen, but combat was still interactive. And does everybody know about the hit point bar? How like you get hit and it's like your hit points are displayed with a rolling counter, and if you heal quick enough, you can actually save your character from dying, because if your hit points are rolling down, even if you take lethal damage, if somebody pops off a cure in time,
Mm.
instead of finishing going down, it starts going up again. So
Oh, that's cool.
it was it was innovative in a lot of ways without feeling like it was just, we're just trying some stuff here because we've never done it before. It really felt like there was a lot of thought behind it, and because of the uniqueness of the setting, it's always going to have a place on my list. I don't have my Super Nintendo anymore. I'm pretty sure mom and dad got rid of it a while ago. But that's one that I played through multiple times and I would happily play through again. I know for a long, long time when I was still getting Nintendo Power, remakes of Earthbound or ports of Rebound were always at the top of the list. Like, please, dear God, why do you not put this on the DS or something? And I think it finally did make its way to Switch, I think, but I don't own a Switch, so somebody would have to
And I
back
can't
me up on that.
remember. Did it hit the
Yeah.
Switch thing, y'all?
Somebody will let us know. But Earthbound, definitely, at this point, it is a classic, which is just strange to say because it really did break the mold in so many ways, but in so many fun ways. So that's my next entry to our discussion.
Okay, it is on the Switch's Nintendo Switch Online thing.
Then it is well worth checking out. I highly recommend it.
And it was on the Super NES Mini.
Was
Wasn't
it?
it?
Okay.
Wait, am I lying?
Yep, it is.
Okay, I thought it was.
Cool.
I've got a mini, and yes, I remember it being on the mini.
Then you should play it. I mean, don't stop recording, but you should play it like
Yeah, I
tomorrow.
really wanted them to put it on the Wii, and I don't think they ever did
I don't
in
think
the
they did.
US. They
I
did
think
in Japan and possibly in Europe, but not in the US.
Hmm.
I
Because I
feel
would have
like
played it
again,
back then.
I think it was like the most requested game to put on the Wii store, and it never was. And everyone was like, "Do you not like money?" Kind of
Yeah.
like we were talking about Konami before. Um, do you not like money?
Oh, Chifuji said it also got released as a 3DS Virtual Console and the Wii U Virtual Console. Yeah, but I didn't have either of those. I had a Wii, so yeah, yeah. Like I've been playing through the Final Fantasy Pixel remasters and just enjoying the evolution of the series. Mechanically speaking, because they all look the same, because the Pixel remasters all have a very specific art style.
Yeah.
Excuse me. And I have yet to get sick. Okay, that's a lie. In Final Fantasy II, the encounter rate in Final Fantasy II is way too high. And
It's just horrible.
It is. And on the
horrible.
Steam version, we didn't have the ability to turn encounters off until after I was done with 2 and I think 3. Or I was right at the end of 3. I can't remember. We got the update for that. And I was like, damn it. Because just trying to go... Like, I missed the treasure chest in this dungeon. Let me prepare for an hour of taking 3 steps, getting hit, and running from the enemy. Because it was way too high. Oh god, I hated it. But other than that, I have yet to get sick of the old school turn-based RPG stuff from these games. Like Final Fantasy 1 is obviously kind of a slog if you don't already love it, because it's the first one. And 2, the encounter rate is way too high, but they fixed the horrible problems with the leveling system. Like, I didn't know this at the time, but in the NES version, if you leveled up, like, strength, your intelligence went down.
Weird.
So you really had to commit. Like, this character's physical, this character's magic, because you didn't want them, swinging a weapon.
Yeah.
And accidentally leveling strength and making their magic weaker. Luckily, they took that out, because that's obnoxious from a gameplay perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They were trying to innovate. They were trying to say, "Hey, here's a different way to do this." And honestly, I get what they were going for.
Oh yeah.
But
like, who ever heard of a smart, strong person?
Well, or I like the, hey, I've been swinging a sword around. I'm going to be better with it than I am going to be with a bow. So
yeah,
I like that. But the implementation was
yeah. The Pixel remaster took away all of the annoying bits of that, and I never felt the urge to beat on my teammates. I don't know.
Me either.
Like there's a developer who said a famous line is, given half a chance, the players will optimize the fun out of the game. And I think that's what happened to people playing Final Fantasy II back in the day, because when I would hit one of my characters, it's because I'm an idiot. And I'd be like, wait, no, that's not what damn it. So, and then 3 introduced the job system, still, very turn-based. Mm-hmm. And 3 introduced the job system, which was neat. It was, a proto-job system, so it wasn't great. There were a bunch of jobs that were just 100% upgrades over other jobs.
Yeah.
And at the end, if you weren't using
even
2
intentionally,
ninjas,
yeah,
if you weren't using 2 ninjas and 2, what were they, sages? Was that the
sage?
Yeah,
sage. Yeah.
Then I don't know what you were doing, but because they were just pretty much objectively the best version of the physical character and the magic characters.
Yeah. They were missable, but it's hard not to find Eureka. They're like, hey, don't miss it, and it's right in front of you.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But, that kept me going. Plus, they did the whole new world thing. Like in Final Fantasy 2, like some towns get destroyed and you can never go back, and that I did not expect that for an NES game. And then in 3, you find out that the world you're in, that's a tiny little island, and there's a whole world out there. What? And it has a few things that can change here and there. And that was really cool. But like they change just enough, you know. They innovate enough to keep the games interesting, so it's not just more of the same. Now this was what they were doing, you know, over years of development, but I'm playing these things back to back to back. And so it's really nice to have this. Like 4 was a proper story. 2 was a story, and it was Star Wars. It was just Star Wars.
It was literally, yeah.
But 4 had a proper story. It lost the job system. All the characters are locked into their jobs and abilities. But that's okay because you're playing 4 for the story. 5 has the best job system. Probably, period. Just the best job system. And a story. But I find myself not caring about the story. I'm super into the mechanical aspect of 5, and I just don't care. I'm like, yeah, all right. Oh, okay. Oh, such and such is dead. Oh, it's sad. All right. Oh, werewolf stole something, you dick. Like, that's it. Like, I read all of the stuff to the stream, but I'm not even doing voices for 5. Like, I don't care. Like,
do you think the villain will be redeemed? The villain named X Death. Do you think he'll be redeemed in the end?
Who is a tree?
Who is a tree?
And who?
But I'm sorry.
In the stream I just did last night, disguised himself as a splinter in Krylee's finger. And when we got somewhere where he wanted to go, he popped out of her finger and became Pastel Golbez again. And I was like, bruh.
Yeah. But
so
I like
I'm
how...
sorry, you're a what?
I like how his parents never even gave him a shot. Like, it wasn't Trevor or Alex or Derek. And I'm sorry, I've never met a Derek I like. But no, we're going to name him X Death. He'll be a doctor. A mortician. But story, not as much.
Didn't like that one. Never met that. Oh, the Derek from Stop Skeletons from Fighting. I met him way back in the day at what is that thing? MagFest, when he was still the happy video game nerd. I like him. He was a good guy.
So there is one.
So there's one.
But anyway, you were talking about the Final Fantasies.
Yeah. 6 is quite possibly I don't do favorites, but if it's not my favorite video game ever, it's in the top, 5. Like, I just love Final Fantasy 6. So
that's because you have eyeballs and, hands with which to grip a controller.
It's true, yeah. And then I'm definitely going to replay 7, and I'm not sure if I'm going to keep going after that. Although I did see that 16 is coming to the PC in September, and I was like, oh, when that goes on sale for super cheap, I'll pick it up and play it in 18 years or so when I get that far. Because the games get longer as you go, everybody. And I'm playing them in 3-hour chunks only on stream, so... For the first 3, I was doing it only on Fridays. Oh, and I played Final Fantasy Renaissance, which is a fan game that adds a bunch of extra stuff to the original NES version of Final Fantasy 1. And that is so awesome. He's announced his next update is going to add 2 new classes. I'm super excited about that. But, so yeah, look, do a search for Final Fantasy Renaissance and check it out. Again, it's the NES version, so you got to deal with that. But he he's done a lot of bug fixing and whatnot, but a lot of the NES annoyances are still there because he's trying to maintain it, being true to the original. And some of that's a little rough if you're not used to it. I'm used to it, so it didn't really bother me. But while I was streaming, I was like, I can see why people don't like the NES version. But yeah, I figured I'd get at least the early Final Fantasies out of the way. I played 7 all the way through. I remember virtually nothing about it other than what I've picked up, in the meantime since then. It's weird how 7 just did not stick in my brain at all.
Mm-hmm.
I despised 8. I hated everything about 8. The magic system, the drawing and junctioning, and I hated the characters. I hated 8. I did not get more than a few hours into 8. And then 9, I played for a very long time, but I don't think I ever beat it because I'm terrible. And that's the last one I played.
9 I liked a whole lot, but how slow combat is drove me insane. Like, combat in 9 is so slow, and it's on purpose, but I'm like... Oh, sorry, I was trying to get to the mute button. I will say I didn't want my whole conversation to be about Final Fantasy, so I'm glad you took the reins on that. I had in my notes Final Fantasy X, specifically because I was figuring out which games I wanted to start Sam on when she was old enough. 10 was the first Final Fantasy I had her play. I say had her play because, I was like, play this, and she's like, okay. Because it has a good story, although there's some parts of it that I'm like, eh. And I knew that the voice acting would probably appeal to her more, especially when she was younger. But the combat is so intuitive, and it looks straightforward with the turn order, but because the turn order can change depending on, like, if the boss is doing something or haste or slow or whatever, you can't just rely on it, but it's still clean. And because you have unlimited time on your turn to figure out what you want to do, especially because she wasn't just new to RPGs, she was new to games in general, it was a benefit to her. Mike, you told me one time you like video games. You weren't ever sure about some of the Final Fantasy entries because you felt like you were playing against the menu during battles, right?
Yeah,
So,
the active time system, because
right.
the time I spend fighting with the menu is time that the things are counting down to when the enemy's gonna hit me in the head. And it's just stressful and annoying
Oh, sure.
sometimes.
And I think that's smart. And when I say smart, I mean, like I get exactly what you're saying, but I had never that phrase always stuck to me, you versus the menu, because I had never thought of it in that sort of context before. And in 10, that's not the case. So I just wanted to bring that up. We got plenty of other RPGs to talk about, but I wanted to make sure I talked about Final Fantasy X because even
Yeah,
though it
10 is
felt
the
weird
only
to
Final
start with
Fantasy I
10.
actually played, and I played it through to the end. I had screwed up my leveling, and I was too underleveled for the final boss when I got there, so I wasn't able to finish it myself. But I watched my brother beat it, so that was close enough.
It was a little heavy on the grinding for me. And people will be like, "What? You didn't have you do for the final boss, you have to grind, and then for all of the extra content, the amount of grinding was too much for me. It took away from the enjoyment of the game. So when I can beat the Ultima dungeon, but I can't beat any of the created monsters at the calms planes that he kind of puts together for you, like, not even close.
Hmm.
And it's like, oh yeah, you just have to, like, fill out everyone's sphere grids all the way. I'm like, I'm not gonna do that, but thank you.
Yeah.
For me, so much of the game is caught up in the story. And I don't mind grinding for a while after the story, especially, and I do that in Kingdom Hearts 2 on a regular basis when I replay it. But if the story ends and all I am doing is smashing my head against enemies for a long, long time, you're gonna lose me. You're just gonna lose me. So, just personal.
See, nowadays we've got podcasts, so you just put on a podcast or something like that. Hi, how many of you are listening to this while playing a video game? Let us know.
Probably a lot.
Like I've been
Send us an
watching a
email.
bunch of I've been having a bunch of long form like YouTube video essay things playing while catching up on stuff in Power Wash Simulator lately.
A game that Chewie explained to Sam at the Olive Garden in great detail. After we went home, she was like, "So Power Wash Simulator." And I'm like, "You need to stop talking to Chewie." Hey, Dirk, what's one on your list that we haven't talked about? If you have a list.
There's
Not everyone
two on
should
the
be
list that I
silent.
want to get to, but the first one is Lunar, the Silver Star story.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. I haven't thought about that in a while. Okay, why?
Um, Once again, it's got a really good story. It's a very in depth and long, and you gain characters and your character develops and everything. Um, but it was one I was introduced to in college, and it has the old like the anime style in terms of the cut scenes and everything, and I didn't know if I'd ever get into that, but it was the first game that like it had it, and I really got into it. um Brian had mentioned that you can get so powerful that the enemies kind of are like, yeah, I have no interest in going near you. You can get high enough leveled in that that when you go into areas, the enemies actually run away from you. And that was very funny to watch in a couple cases where you're like, no, I need the experience, and you have to actually chase down enemies to fight them because they're like, no, anything but that. So that was one of them. It had a really good story. um and one thing that with a good RPG and a story is that you are set on a path and you think, okay, there's challenges in this. All right, we're going and we're getting ready to go over this hill, only to find out that that's not the hill you're going over. Somebody told you, yeah, go down that path and you'll get to your destination, only find out that they totally sent you out into the ocean. And
Dang.
this
Were
game has those
they
moments where you think something's going on, like you think you're working towards a goal, only to have the rug pulled out from underneath you, and only to have, later on in the game, things that you thought were going on to be totally overturned. And this game has that kind of cool story twist in it. So that's why I really like it.
Okay.
So mechanically, what are those?
Um, that having to think back to it, I
Like,
don't
are they?
think there's anything special mechanically. It has a lot to do with the really good story. But it does have the um. Like I say, it's been so long since I played it.
Well,
I'm
what I
trying to
mean is, are
remember.
they turn based? Are they real time? Like what? What's
Oh,
the deal?
turn based, if I
Oh,
remember
okay.
correctly. Like it was kind of in the vein of how um the Final Fantasy, like the seven and all those ran, where um I don't know if it had the active engagement system going on, or if it was just it's your turn. Oh, I have to go run to the bathroom, and you could literally let it sit, and it would just be like, okay, your turn, anytime. Um, I think it was that, but like I said, it's been a while.
Okay.
I gotcha.
Did so I had one item on my list. I want to talk about RPGs we really loved, our favorite RPGs, but there's lessons to be learned from everything. Did anyone ever play the Seventh Saga?
Yep.
Anybody else?
Don't think I know what that is.
It's a Super Nintendo
Chewie.
game by Enix before they merged with Square. Square bought them or whatever.
I rented it once, but this game is kind of infamous. What was your impression of it, Chewie?
I never got very far in it because it's hard as balls. Uh,
It is widely known as one of the most difficult RPGs, and not in like a challenge yourself kind of way. I mean, maybe
Yeah.
for someone.
like the American version has a bug. So you have a bunch of characters that you can pick from to be your main character. I think there are what 6 or 7, something like that.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Not 8.
There's the knight dude, the elf chick, the evil, and he's evil.
There's a demon, right?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
demon
Oh, yeah.
magic user, the big robot, the druid, the dwarf, the weird
be
red
it.
guy. Yeah, okay, maybe there are 8.
Yeah.
But every time you pick a character, another one of them, because you all exist in the world, becomes your rival. And at some point, like you're all trying to get crystals or some sort of MacGuffins.
Runes. Yeah.
And at
think it's
one point,
runes.
you have to fight your rival, and I think it's close to the end of the game. But the way that your rival levels is different than the way you do, and so they're massively more like higher level than you.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's like a major difficulty spike that a lot of people didn't get through. I could be remembering some of the details of this wrong, so I'm sorry. This is all stuff I've absorbed over the years.
No, I think you're right. And I also think the game had a love of like instant death spells. Just like so
Yes.
many. And keep in mind we're talking about like old school RPG. So like if you die in Kingdom Hearts, it's you can choose continue and it sets you back to the room before the boss fight. So you can go like, nope. We're talking about like you died and the last time you saved was 3 hours ago. Well, hmm.
But it
Hope
was
that was fun.
Oh, here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, there are 7.
There you go.
Oh, the red guy's an alien. So there's an alien, a robot, a dwarf, a human knight, a demon, a human cleric, and an elf mage. And you can pick, like you can find the other characters that aren't your rival in the world and try to talk one of them into helping you so that you at least have, a two-member party.
Mm-hmm.
But it was incredibly, incredibly difficult. Like to the point of like, is this worth it? And I guess for some people, if they can say they beat it, hey, all the more power to them. But I had on my list because it tried to be innovative. Um, you did have random encounters, but you had a radar on your screen, so they showed up as like little blips. So if
Yeah.
you wanted to avoid them, you could avoid them, but you were never gonna beat the game if you didn't level a lot. Oh, yeah.
Oh, here we go. The game is
Uh,
particularly known for its unforgiving difficulty due to balance changes made in its localization. Enemies were
There you
given
go.
much higher stats. Oh, and the player character's stat increases were reduced. Parentheses. The other playable characters retain the original stat increases, so they will always surpass the player character's level. There we go. So it's not just your rival, it's freaking all of the other main
Weird.
characters.
It was an early RPG. It tried to do a couple things and it just didn't do all of them very well. And when if you think modern RPGs are too easy and you try this will have you giving up. You never beat it, right, Chewie?
No, not even close. Might be one I go back to at some point. I'm pretty sure that there's a patch on ROM hacking that restores the original character growth. I might have already installed that patch, to be perfectly honest.
So there you
That's
go. So hey,
That's a
enough
weird
people,
localization.
Right?
enough people support Chewie on Patreon. He will submit himself to the Seventh Saga, and maybe if we hit a stretch goal, he'll play the original localized version and hate everyone.
Yeah, we'll go with all of that.
Yeah. But I want again. I had on the list just because it tried, but not every effort is a success. What were you gonna say, Chewie?
I don't remember. Something.
The demon made you forget.
Yeah, something about what you were saying made me think of something that I was going to say, but then by the time you got around to being done, it fell out of my brain.
That sounds like something that would happen on a regular basis. Yes.
Yeah, yeah. Oh well. But it wasn't bad. It was just, it's actually something Mike said. I think that part of the localization thing, Japanese developers were terrified of the ability to rent games here in the US. So a lot of Nintendo and Super Nintendo American versions are just balls hard compared to the Japanese version. And this might be one of those.
That's so interesting because, like,
So
in
it
Final
was
Fantasy,
ramped up so you couldn't just beat it over a weekend?
Yeah.
that's interesting because, like, in Final Fantasy 2/4, they were like, Americans are dumb. So, like, Cecil didn't have the darkness command. Like, there were so many ways in which that game was toned down
Yeah.
compared to the original
Well,
Japanese. But yeah,
that was because we didn't have Final Fantasies 2 and 3 to like cuz RPGs back then didn't sell terribly well in the States.
right.
So they didn't want to like blast people who maybe remembered Final Fantasy 1 and were picking up Final Fantasy 2 and the Super Nintendo. They didn't want to blast them in the face with a whole lot of complication that if you'd been able to pick up 2 and 3, in the interim you would have gotten used to it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we joke and say, gamers that, oh yeah, the Japanese thought Americans were dumb. It wasn't just that. It was still that, but
Yeah. Okay.
but yeah.
And I'm gonna mention one other one I have on my list here because you mentioned localization and how it can have changes in difficulty. Sometimes localization can be difficult just because of I don't even know miscommunication between the offices or what, but I'm sure everyone knows a game that was ported from Japan where the dialogue makes no sense. You spoony bard, something like that. And these days, you know, that doesn't happen as much. But I have on my list Breath of Fire. And I'm specifically thinking of Breath of Fire 2 because that's the first one I played. But the first two games for Breath of Fire were on the Super Nintendo, and then Breath of Fire 3 was on, I think, the PlayStation or PS2. Maybe PlayStation 1. Um, and it's a cool concept. For anybody that loves dragons, well, congratulations. The dragon tribe is like the focus of this game in a world where you have like a tribe of armadillo people and a tribe of dragon people. Which one's gonna be cooler? And there's a tribe of people with wings, so it's spread around a bit. But Breath of Fire 2 was a very good game and was not as difficult as the Seventh Saga in terms of just not being fair and leveling, but It did require some grinding, and it was punishing. It was never unfair, but it made you work for it. And if an enemy was too difficult for you, it really wasn't a question. It wasn't going to be like, what strategy should I use? You just keep dying because you're underleveled. But it had a couple things that I really liked about it. Like over the course of the game, you could free up to 8 shamans, and each shaman represented an element. And then you had a workshop where for any one of your party characters, except for one of them for story reasons, you could essentially equip a shaman to them, and equipping one of them might result in some status boosts, and some characters had more alignment with one element versus another. But if you equipped two specific ones, not only could it result in an astronomical uh, increase, but it could actually change how that character looked, and it would give them different commands. And that was playing around with that and finding the different essentially forms that these characters could take was great. And again, your main character can change into a dragon. So I mean, I really don't know what you wouldn't love about it, except except that the localization, there are times where the game asks you a yes or no question, and the localization has it backwards.
That's
So it's
impressive.
like, do you want to die? Yes or no? I select no. Oh, I don't know why you're suicidal. Game over. Restart. Not quite that bad, but I even bring this up because on in the workshop, the synthesis workshop where you combine the people, um the you have to answer no to the do you accept this arrangement to go forward, and I'm like, once you figure it out, you're like, okay, I'm fine. But the way that the characters talk, and there's a lot of times there's missing punctuation, so you really have to through some of the lines. But it really is an awesome story, and it is well worth it. But just be aware it can be difficult to get through. There are a couple bosses where the game is like hard check. Are you where you need to be? Because if not, you need to stop what you're doing. But it is worth it in the end to play the whole way through. The last level of the game is spoilers for a like 30-year-old game, is even called Infinity, and it just
Yep.
keeps going down, and it's hard, and so it's appropriately named, but it's worth it. It is a spot on my list, but it is not for the faint of heart. So that's
Hmm.
Breath of Fire, specifically Breath of Fire 2.
Yeah, I remember seeing like I think the first one in Nintendo Power and being like, this looks really cool. But I never ended up getting it. Boo.
I ended up playing the first one sometime later, and it was pretty good, but the second one just takes a lot of what the first one does and does better. Funny how that works.
Like funny, haha, or
Let's say yes.
yeah. So how about you other two? What else? What else you got? I feel like we should
Um,
talk about tabletop at some point.
Yes.
the last one I have on my list, I've actually got several, but the last one I will talk about um, was the first one I remember where your choices truly decided sort of how, like, what ended up happening in the game, and that's
Ooh.
Fable.
I heard about Fable, never played it, but that was how it was billed, was you decide how your story goes, right?
Right. That you, I mean, all you get to decide how you play the game in terms of role playing. So, if you're going to be the hack and slash guy, you go to town. If you're the I'm going to electrocute you until you're dead. You do that. My preference was to do hack and slash with magic thrown in between, and my favorite was where you could speed, like dash run. And so what I would do is slow time, dash run behind an enemy, and hack and slash them from behind while time was slowed. And so when they came undone, they were like, "Oh my gosh, somebody's been been knocking me over and everything." And so that was mine. But I mean, you could easily just stand back and just throw light arrows at them or lightning bolt them, or you could be the person who is shooting bow and arrows at them the whole time. Slow time, dash backwards, shoot, 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 shoot. So there's a lot of different ways you could play. But the big thing about it was that you could choose to either be a good person or a bad person, and your choices decided what outcome you ended up following. And so you could be the person who chooses good, and you've got like sort of this white aura and a little halo that happens over you, or you could be the evildoer who's always choosing bad things, and you develop like devil horns that are popping out of your head, and flies are flying around you because of your dark aura, sort of thing. So that was very much into it, and just like with everything, there were little side things you could do in terms of side quests and treasures and all kinds of little things you could do. But that's the first one I remember where your choices really did decide, the end result of this. So that's the one the last one I have on my list that I'll go over.
Nice. I never got into the Fable games because Peter Molyneux is and continues to be a problem.
He definitely oversells things, but the problem is yeah, he oversells things, but the games that Lionhead made were so good. He just would oversell them, and that's what was a little disappointing with the game, with them for me.
Oh, it wasn't just you.
But the games were so good.
So I heard. Never played any of them though. Oh well.
So you mentioned tabletop. I obviously run a D&D campaign with these other two fools and my daughter and my brother. So Dungeons and Dragons obviously is the dragon in the room when we're talking about that. But quick question, has anyone and I'll be upfront, D&D is the only tabletop RPG I have played. So I'm looking at the more experienced people on the podcast. Has anyone ever played Vampire the Masquerade? Because I've heard people get really into that.
No, I haven't. I knew some people who did.
Yeah, I did too.
Did they? I guess they enjoyed it. I don't.
Oh
really
yeah,
know the
they did.
context.
They got really into it.
Yeah.
But that's like
Okay.
the hardcore super nerd stuff.
Okay. Not just nerd, super nerd.
And
Yeah,
that's coming
hardcore.
from us
Yes.
with our podcast about a card game that's been running forever.
700. Yes, 700.
So that tells
episodes.
you where they fall on the nerd hierarchy.
I say that lovingly, of course.
We'll go with that. Yeah.
There's
Okay.
only 3 other tabletop role playing games that I would say I really played.
What are those?
So one of them
What are
was
those? I'm sorry.
one of them was a Marvel superheroes game that I borrowed, and I think I still have 20 some years later, um, from one of my cousins. Uh, that was interesting. You know, of course, all your favorite superheroes and supervillains, and the mechanics are made to be streamlined so that you don't have to do a whole lot of math when you're playing. You just play, and then your skills and your attributes have a certain rating, and you know the enemies you're fighting have ratings on their skills and attributes, and some of the stuff you do, the I think the dungeon master is called a judge in that game. The judge decides how hard they are, and basically you just compare things on a table to figure out the result of stuff that happens. So that was cool. Um, and you know, it played quickly and it was smooth, and it had a bunch of cool characters that everyone recognized. Um, Another one that I played fairly often with people in middle school was called GURPS. And
Ah, GURPS.
yeah, I know that's the reaction a lot of people have. um, that's a system that's like it's all D6 based. It's just based on different amounts of six-sided dice for rolling stats and rolling stuff that happens, and doing damage and stuff. It was made to be easy to pull together the stuff you needed to play, and there was stuff written up for it to be set in like basically any time, any place, any kind of setting that you would want to, whether it be you know, modern day real world or dystopian near future or high fantasy or hard sci-fi or whatever. Um, and that was pretty fun because you could just make up whatever and play whatever with your friends. And the other one that I got interested in was the Call of Cthulhu game that was published by Chaosium. There've been a few different versions of it, but the one by Chaosium was the one that I got some books for and played some sessions with friends. And that's kind of unique in the way that, like the short stories and novellas that it's based on, it's really more about the investigation of the mystery and telling the story and unraveling the, you know, whatever weird and horrible things are going on. Because combat in that game is really dangerous. Like,
Hmm.
you're probably just gonna die. Like, so if you're smart about it, you try to avoid combat. You try to run from monsters. You don't go looking for a fight because you'll just come to a horrible end.
You know,
And
I
that's
kind of
really in
get it.
line with the
Like,
source material.
yeah,
Uh-huh.
I kind of get it. Like, who would win, a group of intrepid adventurers or Cthulhu?
Yeah, or even like a group of zombies. You know, zombies are dangerous too. They don't feel pain, they're hard to kill, and they want to eat you. You know.
That is true. Zombies, never getting the respect they deserve.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do like the idea of an RPG that isn't combat based.
Yeah.
Like Mike, you would probably like Disco Elysium,
Oh yeah.
which is a PC. Well, I think it's on various systems, but it's an RPG where you're, I think you're a detective, like a cop,
Okay. Hmm.
and based on your stats and various roles that may or may not be hidden, you have, was it 16, I think, inner voices that will, like voices in your head that will talk to you based on
Mm.
any number of bizarre things. But combat in the game is not really a thing. Like, it's all about talking and rolling and moving on. You know, taking what happens and going with it. and it's been on my list to play for a long time, since it came out, essentially. But I don't actually know if you'd like it, but I just realized
I've heard people say good things about it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it came up in the Discord. This is like my favorite thing ever. And I'm like, whoa, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Was that Violet? That might have been Violet. I guess I have Discord right here. I could just go look. But there's a lot of... that was Violet. And there are 16. Like, the voices are cool and distinct. What did Violet say? There's one that determines your agility, for example. But there's also one that determines how much you anthropomorphize the world around you. Or one that determines how well you react to drugs. Or one that determines how much authority you can wave around. Stuff like that.
Neat.
And yeah, I guess it gives the game a lot of replay value because you might get different voices in your head based on whatever's going on.
Cool.
Yeah, I just like the idea of it. Not everything is about hitting things with a sword or shooting things with a gun.
Right.
Yeah.
And I mean,
when Mike brought up Chaosium or the Call of Cthulhu, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, combat does happen in that game, and it's usually part of tense moments and definitely the climax of a lot of encounters. But it's like it'll be like all of the a lot of them are like all the player characters versus one monster, and it's really tough, and someone's probably dead by the end, and the rest of them barely made it. But it's not that it never happens, but it's not the focus, and it is risky.
So that just sounds neat.
I want to say something. I realize
Imagine that.
I guess I have apparently been lying to you guys this whole time. I think I repressed a memory. I did play one session of a tabletop game in high school.
Whoa.
Yeah. It was a Star Wars tabletop RPG. It was a system. I couldn't tell you who made it, who made the source books, anything like that. And it came out around the same time as episode 1. And the only time I did it, when I was working in the movie theater in high school, and one of the lead employees said, "Hey, do we want to try this?" And he had much more experience with Dungeons and Dragons, all that. And I was like, Star Wars is cool, so sure, I'll give this a shot. So I rolled up a Jedi, but at level 1, your Jedi is fairly weak, and we
Luke
played
Skywalker
one
in
session.
the first movie.
A less competent.
Oof.
Yeah. I want to hunt panthers. And it was probably like a group of 5 of us or so. Somebody was a droid, somebody was a bounty hunter. It seemed fine, but we did one session, and I had never done an RPG before. And I'm telling you, I even had repressed this. I didn't have a horrible time. I just think I'd never really even considered this in my experience, because we did one session and it lasted for like 5 hours and we got nothing done, which now I know by like D&D standards, I'm like, yeah, I get that. But I spent the whole time basically waiting to, do whatever. We had one combat where I almost chopped off my own leg with my lightsaber, because at level 1, you're not going to be great at stuff. And I just found the whole thing to be very tedious. And I was trying to be like, yeah, let's do this, let's have a great time. And I just never had the urge to ever try it again, to the point that I'm only thinking about it now, over 20 years later. So there you go.
I played a different Star Wars. I played a one-off adventure of a different Star Wars system. Someone had got like a little in the box demo kit for it to try it out, and it used its own special dice that had like symbols on them for like successes and failures and other stuff. And it was so funny. I don't know if we all started doing this because it was a Star Wars game or just because that's how the encounter played out. But I realized later that we were doing kind of the Star Wars thing of, okay, to, make our objective, we just kept going along and like lying until it was time to start running, and then running until it was time to start shooting.
That sounds incredibly Star Wars.
Yeah.
Boring conversation anyway. How are you?
Hmm.
I'm gonna send someone to check. A negative, negative. Don't do that. We're rolling dice up here.
Exactly.
I've been thinking about this all day, and I'm still only kind of have an idea of why I have no interest in tabletop RPGs. Because I've noticed, like, no offense to you other two who have more experience with RPGs and whatnot, but I've noticed I'm the only one that does anything vaguely interesting in Brian's RPG. Like in combat, I mean. Dirk's like, I'm gonna shoot it with a bow. Mike's like, I'm gonna hit it with my sword. And I'm like, I'm gonna fly around and swing things and cast spells and use my white mana thing in neat ways and this and that and the other. And I think I've realized what it is. It's having to do it with other people. Because it really does seem like D&D would be totally my thing. But I have a very low tolerance for having requiring other people to do things.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed that the show's been going this long. I don't know how some weeks I don't know how I haven't driven to each of your houses and stabbed you.
Oh, by the way,
Yeah.
Chewie, I can't make it tonight. Just so you know.
But I just don't like having to rely on other people, and having other people having to rely on me. By the same token, but mostly the first one. Because if for this show, if one of you doesn't show up, it's fine. 3 of us can handle it. If I don't show up, well, we don't do a show because I'm the one that does the streaming and the recording and all that. But especially with our RPG, there's only the 4 of us. And if somebody doesn't show, then we can't do it. And I know that there are workarounds, in the RPG, but if I couldn't make it one week and someone's like, I'll play your character, I'd be like, I'll kill your family.
Mm-hmm.
Don't touch my character. And I don't know. I think that's the main reason that I have no interest in it, is because it's a group activity and I don't like other people. I mean, I like you guys. You know what I mean? I don't like, especially as we all get older and have other stuff to do, it would drive me up the wall if someone's like, yeah, we can't do it this week. I'll be like, damn it.
Yeah, that's fair.
And I think when I was younger and that wasn't an issue, it never came up. I don't think anybody was ever like, hey, you want to try D&D? And I have no idea, looking back, what I would have said back then. But it never came up, so I never gave it a try. And that bothers me. But like I said, I've been thinking about this a lot today since this was our topic. I'm like, why? Because I swear, it sounds like I'm having a blast when we're playing the RPG for the show. And I think that's all. I just don't. I don't want to have to get into this commitment thing with other people. And that's a bummer.
Well, as long as you're enjoying what we're doing together, then it can still be an outlet for you, and that's part of the benefit of creating a game for you guys. And also, when you say something like, you're the one that's in combat, like you have more options than the others, part of that is the fault of the game creator, whoever that guy is. Let's find him in a dark alley and, beat him up.
That guy sucks.
And then, yeah, and then play style as well. But it's interesting that you mention, wanting to be self-reliant, not having to wait on other people to do stuff for you. And I think that's interesting. You and I have gotten along pretty well together when we do two-headed giant, but that's few and far between. We haven't done that in forever. And that's literally just the two of us, not anybody else. I don't think it would work as a format as like four-headed giant or something like that. That would be insufferable for pretty much everybody.
Sorry, I didn't mean to get all like existential here, but it's a thing that I've been thinking about all day. Because
we're talking about RPGs and what they mean to us, so this is very much on point.
Yeah, like when I asked in the Discord, hey, what are y'all's favorite RPGs? Everybody just jumped in with immediate like tabletop stuff. Mycroft was like, oh, Pathfinder 2nd Edition. And Violet was like, oh, we just went to Gen Con and played a bunch of stuff. And then later I rattled off like 4 or 5 different games that they played at Gen Con. And I got a couple of people saying that they're a huge fan of Fate, which is a system I've never even heard of. But once Fate was mentioned, everyone was like, yeah, Fate's really good. I'm like, the gotcha game? No, it's Fate Grand Order, you idiot. This is Fate. Just Fate. Oh, nobody said that. I figured that out myself.
I play FGO.
See?
Well,
yeah.
But it is 10:30, and I mean, I have 3 more items on my list, but one of them is like tactics RPGs ? Like Final Fantasy Tactics and whatnot, and that can again be its own thing.
Yeah, is XCOM an RPG? See, we keep getting into stuff like that.
Yeah, right. So
there's
honestly,
a whole genre we didn't even talk about.
What's that?
Live action role playing.
Nope, didn't get to that, but I've never done it, so I don't.
Yeah, have any of us?
No, but again, I've known people who did some Vampire the Masquerade stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, was that?
If you're looking at games, ActRaiser is considered a action RPG.
Really?
Which is dumb, because it's literally just a platform.
Neither part of that. Like, it's a god game.
Or a platformer. Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way, I love, but it's not.
Yeah, like,
anyway.
LARPing used to be, like, the bottom of the nerd totem pole. Like, back in the day, when we were all more smug about the kind of nerd we were. Like, well, at least we're not LARPers. But, like, LARPing is, like, a huge thing. Like, just a couple of names that our listeners might know. Like, Ruben Bresler is a big LARPer, as is Brian Kibler. And Brian Kibler is, I don't know if anyone knows this, Brian Kibler is one of the sexiest men to live. So,
sure.
Like, I look at what the COVID hair thing did to him, and I'm pissed, because mine didn't do any of that. He just turned into, like, an actual paladin. But I don't think Kibler is on the bottom of the nerd totem pole, even though I'm pretty sure he still plays Hearthstone, so that's a couple of points off. But playing Hearthstone in 2024, nerd. But, and he might not. I don't know. I haven't actually looked in a long time. But, like, LARPing is a big deal now, and I'm pretty sure I know a couple of LARPers myself, but they're not like super loud about it, so I'm only kind of sure I know. But it's like a whole thing that none of us have ever done, and it's not, the dude in a bathrobe throwing pebbles, screaming "lightning bolt" like that we all remember from the internet back in the early 2000s.
Well, sure. Just like D&D is not. What was that skit that we heard, like, if there's any girls there,
Oh yeah,
Mountain Dew and
the dead.
I got an ogre slaying knife.
yeah.
What were the who did that? The dead
Dead
something.
Alewives
Dead
Club.
Alewives Club. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Although that is still a significant part of that. Renee was telling me actually recently that one of her previous boyfriends was a Warhammer 40K guy, and because his friends used to come over to their place because they had a glass top table, and so they could crawl under the table and like look at sight lines and whatnot. So they preferred to come to their place. She's like, I used to be called in as an impartial judge to like try to settle debates about sight lines and whatnot. And she's like, I'm trying to play video games in the other room and leave you alone. Why don't you leave me alone? I don't care. But there are all kinds of nerds out there, and we're all nerds, and we should all be happy that we're all nerds.
Yes.
Is my point, bringing up LARPing and miniature battles and whatnot. Anyway, should we shut up?
Yeah, because I'm ready to go to bed.
Yeah. So how about some final thoughts? I can't believe I only mentioned Skyrim briefly, but that's okay.
Well, there you go. And I guess for my final thought, I told Chewie and Mike I was probably going to do a very brief final thought, if anything, tonight. But not to get too personal, but my wife's had some health concerns. Now we're okay. Nobody's terribly worried about anything, but she's had some stuff going on, including bronchitis, and she's been down for going over 2 weeks at this point.
I was going to say,
it's
yeah,
been a
because
bit
it had
rough.
been several days the last time we recorded.
Oh yeah, we're
And that was 2
going
weeks
on
ago.
3 weeks. Yeah, but she's doing better. So appreciate all the positive thoughts, and she's feeling better.
Good.
Work has been absolutely crazy for me, but I'm so glad I can talk to these guys when we can get together and just chill for a while. So, and RPGs have always been one of my favorite types of games. Board games, any type of game, RPGs. It's like playing a novel, and I love reading and I love writing when I can. So I'm so happy we got to have this conversation. Uh, Unfortunately, with what time it is, I do need to go check on Carrie. So I'm gonna go say goodnight to you guys, and everybody have a good one.
Night, B.
No. For my final thought, there were two series that I thought of as being that they're technically RPGs that were not mentioned and whatnot. One of them was the Mana series,
Yep.
would fall into it, and the other one was Mass Effect series.
I figured that if anyone was going to bring up Mass Effect, it would be you, because I think you're the only one of us that played him.
Yep. So, and that one, if we were going to talk about action RPG, I would think that one would probably fall into that realm. I think that's probably the best example of it that I can think of. But
Mass Effect used to trip me out because for the longest time, everyone talked about the story and like the loyalty missions and all of that stuff, and nobody talked about the actual gameplay. It was years before I knew that it was a third-person shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Years, because no one talks about it, because that's just like the part you gotta slog through to get to the good stuff, apparently.
So, but yeah, and with that, I am also going to go to bed. Next week is the start of school, and I've
Oh.
got tomorrow to figure out what the world I'm doing next week.
Oh, your school starts kind of late, huh?
Actually, that's
I mean, because
yeah,
ours
same
around
time
here.
as everybody else for the most part.
I mean, around here, ours started I think 2 weeks ago.
They can't.
Do
They
what?
legally can't.
Dumb. Pretty
North
sure it's been 2
Carolina,
weeks.
by law, prevents schools from starting until after August 25th.
That is absolutely not right because if it's not been 2 weeks, it's been 2 weeks. Yeah, pretty sure the first day of school here was the 12th.
They got a special waiver to do it, or they are completely ignoring the law.
Something tells me the entire county isn't just breaking the law.
Saying.
Breaking the
That's the
law.
reason why
Breaking the
we're
law.
starting. We started when we are. That's why the counties around us haven't started yet. So, but anyway, I'm off to bed. You guys have a wonderful evening.
Time now to connect the dots,
Oh,
and we
Lord.
make the news.
Shut up. Sorry. I opened up a news site and the stupid autoplay thing started playing. You know when they have an article, but then they have the video that's about the article?
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, apparently schools are defying state law by starting earlier than allowed.
Oh.
Be wine. All right. Night all.
Nice, Eric. So yeah, apparently Dirk. This is about the Charlotte area schools, but like, yeah, they started here a while back. So I don't.
So, like, what? Are
It's
they
time
trying
to connect
head
the
off
dots.
expected
We
snow
make
days
the
or
news
something?
make sense.
What?
This
Another
morning,
one
colleges
started
all over
playing
the
and I
country
can't
are
see
going.
it. Mute site. I'm sorry. Say that again.
Are they like trying to head off expected snow days or what?
I have no idea. It's bizarre.
That's weird. Unless
Let's
they're trying to
see
do a
here.
longer winter break or also trying to end early because there's only so many days that school has to be in session.
Let's see. School districts are pushing back, arguing that starting later in August disrupts the academic calendar. Education leaders say starting late also prevents students from finishing semester exams before winter break. That is true. I always thought it was
Oh,
really
yeah,
stupid that we would
Yes,
have winter break and then come back and have to take exams.
Yeah, that's pretty terrible.
Like, I always hated that in school. Always. Like, it's dumb. Which is why college always made so much more sense. Because they're like, hey, exams, go have Christmas break. Yeah, hell yeah.
Man, I had forgotten about that silliness.
Because it's silliness. But, you know, we have a Democratic governor, but our all of our lawmaking here in North Carolina is Republican, so I'm surprised they're not like, you can't go back to school. Anyway, what you got for a final thought there, Beardy Man?
There was another tabletop game I played a one-off of I think it was called Gamma World. And I think it's been around for a while. But one of the things, at least in the version I played, is that okay, so the basic premise of Gamma World is, dystopian near future where there's been some kind of nuclear disaster and there's a bunch of mutants roaming around the wasteland, including you.
Hey, Mike.
Yes.
First edition for Gamma World came out in 1978.
Oh, it has been around a while. All right.
7th edition, which looks like the final one, came out in 2010.
Okay, then I might have been playing that final version. Thinking about when it was. So yeah, there's a bunch of mutants roaming the wasteland, including you. And one of the features is that each player has some kind of random mutation-related ability that gets determined before the encounter starts, and it's like new every time. in the one I was playing, this was represented by a little deck of cards with all the possible mutations in it that just gets shuffled up, and each player gets dealt out one before it starts. And there's all kinds of different abilities and effects in there. Some of them weaker than others, some of them stronger than others. Some of them also have the possibility that they turn detrimental rather than beneficial. And I think most of the time that's like a balancing impact, because the beneficial side is like really good. So sometimes there's a chance it might actually be bad. I guess just to put a little more variance and unpredictability into the game. But there was one that's in there like just as a complete joke, where it has a beneficial side and a detrimental side. And the beneficial version of it is that you can talk to fish.
Yeah.
And the detrimental version of it is that you only think you can talk to fish. And one of the people I was with was telling me that he had played a session where someone pulled that, and it made for some really funny role playing during the session.
I bet. That's pretty great.
Yeah. So I figured I'd share that little anecdote for a final thought.
I mean, I only think I can talk to fish, but at least I know I only think I can talk to fish.
Yeah.
Oh man, I had a bizarre night a couple of nights ago.
Oh yeah.
I had not streamed that night because of issues, and I decided I'll watch a movie, and I looked at what was falling off of Netflix, and I saw The Accountant, which is a Ben Affleck movie.
Oh.
It was fine, you know. He's an accountant and assassin, and this is from 2016, so some of the terminology probably isn't right anymore, but he was high-functioning autistic. But it wasn't one of those, like, autism's a superpower movies. It just was why he did these two things. That and because of his insane father. But anyway, I thought it was really nice that was just what he did. Like, it wasn't a superpower. It was just an aspect of his character. And I thought it was, for 2016, it was a really good Hollywood version of autism. But had a hell of a cast, too. John Lithgow was in it, and John Bernthal, you know, the guy that played the Punisher. And Anna Kendrick. I was like, oh, okay.
Huh.
But it was fine. But as soon as the movie ended, the power went out. So I'm sitting in pitch blackness, and like a second later, I hear a loud ass boom from outside, and I went, "Oh, that was a transformer blowing somewhere." Okay, guess I'm not getting power back anytime soon. So I went rifling through I turned on my phone flashlight. I went rifling through my junk drawer to find I have a little like light, like a little what kind of light is that? I can't think of the word. But, you know, like the light you see in the ceiling, like at the office. You know, the long tube, except it's just a little short one. And that's all it is. It's a light with a switch. I think you're supposed to like put like stickers or stick it somewhere like in a workspace or something. I don't know. I got them back when I worked at RJ Reynolds. There was a big ass box of them. They're like, "Hey, you want a couple of these? We're gonna toss them." I'm like, "Yeah, sure." So, and that's what I use when the power goes out. And then I went outside because when the power goes out, and you live in an apartment complex and you're, moderately friendly with your neighbors, you go outside and you talk about it because people go outside when the power goes out. And that's what happened. Is there were a bunch of people, holy crap, did you hear that? Like, yeah, how could you not? And, stood around outside and shot the breeze with the neighbors for a few minutes. Someone we didn't recognize but apparently lives nearby. It was just our apartments. Over there, light. Street lights were still on. That street light is all LED now. When did they change that? Oh, a few weeks ago when they were doing that road work? Okay, I didn't know that. The houses behind us, lights. Damn it, it was literally just the apartments. So we shot the breeze for a while. I was like, it was midnight when this happened. I'm like, oh, I guess, you know what? The last time the power went out for several days, which was when cute neighbor chick still lived next door.
Yeah.
I had bought a candle in a jar. And I was like, I'm going to light my candle and read some Transmetropolitan. Lay in the bed, read for a bit, go to sleep. So I dug and dug and dug and dug and dug and did not have a lighter of any sort. No matches, no lighter. I could have sworn I had a kitchen lighter thing. Nope. I'm like, well, piss. So I go back outside, and the neighbor upstairs, What Smokes, was still outside. I was like, can I borrow a lighter real quick? I can't find one. She's like, sure. Light the candle, take it back to her, come back down, find the book, lay in the bed, open the book up, blackness. I was like, damn you, inverse square law. Because the amount of light you get is... anyway. You lose it exponentially based on distance. So I moved it as close to the bed as I could, opened up, still can't see. So I ended up using my little lamp thing and just putting it on my forehead while I laid in bed reading Transmetropolitan. Because anywhere else it either would cast a shadow, like if I put it next to my head, cast a shadow. And if I put it on my chest, now the light is blinding me. So I just sat it on my forehead while I read. I posted a picture of that in the Discord. I was like, this was my solution. Ended up reading for way longer than I meant to. And about 2 o'clock, a little before 2, I heard another boom outside. And I was like, really? What the hell? And then about 5 minutes later, the power came on. An hour and a half before the estimation, we all got the little email or text message that was like, we're going to try to have your power back on by 3:30. And I was like, nice. Came on right around 2. I was impressed. And then I tried to figure out what the hell, how did I hear another boom right before our power came back on? Maybe it was unrelated. I don't know. But yeah, I got to bond with some neighbors and do some reading by not candlelight and hear 2 explosions in the distance. And it was just a nice little night. I forget how much of my life is taken up with electricity. Like, everything that I do for entertainment these days basically requires power and internet. And it was nice to just lay there and read, even though I was reading with a piece of plastic on my forehead for life. But yeah, it was a strange night. Kind of wish I'd been able to see either of those explosions, because I bet they lit up the night sky. Something awesome. Yeah. But oh well. Because of where I was each time, like, it just sounded like it was outside. Like, sitting on the couch, it sounded like it came from outside to the right, because the door is to the right, so all the sound comes through the door, regardless of where it actually was. This is a thing I've learned, is I always think everything is coming from the right if I'm on the couch. Because the walls are soundproofed really well, but the door is not. And laying on the bed, hearing the boom, I thought it sounded like if you drew a straight line out the window in that direction, that's where it sounded like it came from. I'm like, I don't have three-dimensional sound in my apartment. That's good to know. All sound comes from wherever I am to wherever the nearest less soundproofed region is. That might not be interesting to anybody else, but I thought it was cool that I always think everything is coming from outside and to the right. Anyway. But I got to hear 2 explosions, and that's always good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You can never have enough explosions. I'm just saying. Oh, hey! Patreon.com/themanapool. If you want me to play the 7th saga, according to Brian. One of these days, I'll probably get around to that. Probably not on stream. Unless you want me to, dear listeners. But hey, let me thank our mythic lifeguards, Al, Kimho, Scuzzo, Jake Jansons, Michael. Who the hell is Michael? Team ULS are you? Jason Kaus, Jason Doan, Casey, ALK Alters, and Andrew Odie. Yay. And of course, Twitter. I refuse to call it X. Threads, BlueSky. I'm on all of those. Join the Discord if you're not in the Discord. We're a small but good community, I would say. Yeah. And if you buy stuff on Humble, then please use my affiliate link. Thank you. They have some sick ass bundles right now. Hashtag not sponsored, but holy crap, dude. The Capcom Summer Bundle. It's got almost all of the Dead Risings, Street Fighter V, Dragon's Dogma, Dark Arisen, the Phoenix Wright Ace Attorney trilogy, the Capcom Beat 'em Up bundle, the Fighting Collection, the Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, Ghost Trick. I was like, Jesus. And I bought that for myself. And put a large chunk of it in the charity giveaway spreadsheet. Today, there's a Resident Evil bundle that's got basically all the Resident Evil games. It doesn't have 4 Remake, but it's got everything else. Yeah. Revelations 1 and 2, 0, 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and the remakes of 2 and 3. Like, all right. Calm yourself there, Humble Bundle. Save some for later. Anyway. But my affiliate link is on the link tree. themanapool.com. If you start there, go to Humble, buy stuff. I appreciate you. Because if you're going to buy it anyway, help a brother out. I guess that's it. So this has been the Manapool 704. Be sure to let us know on any of the social media stuff or in the Discord, or send us an email even. Why not? Your favorite RPGs and why. Don't just be like, I like this game. Tell us why, because I always want to know why. Because to be honest, I don't care what you like. I want to know why you like it. Yeah. All right then. So, thank you all so very much for joining us. And is it too late to roll for initiative? I don't know how this works.